And welcome into the Four Verticals Podcast, episode 178. Here on this beautiful, warm, muggy Jacksonville, Florida. Hi, it's up Jacksonville, Florida. Yes, we're a little bit later than usual, but that's happened sometimes. Got a big show for you guys today. Got a lot of things to discuss. We're finally doing our record projection series. It's finally back. So we are starting that segment. We're bringing it back for 2026. We have Florida State on deck first. We have thoughts on NCAA Tournament expansion. We're not a college basketball show. We will talk about it in terms of college football. Then we'll wrap up the show with some thoughts on the Auburn Georgia rivalry. Is it still relevant? For those who are here, well, first of all, welcome to the show. If you're new here, real quick, I'm going to check and see, because on my restream, I have two screens on YouTube here, or at least two video, or at least two camera views. Let me check and see if that's the problem on my phone real quick, and it's just one screen. Okay, that's weird. There's two screens, but anyway, I'm not sure why that's happening on my side of things. For you guys, it's fine. And actually, speaking of that, let me send out the stream link to YouTube, to Twitter real quick. If you're on Spotify, this won't matter. I just forgot to do this real quick. Okay, I guess we are good with that. And here's the link. Send it out. Okay, all right, that's been done with. All right, so let's get into the show here again. If you're new here, we do this show twice a week, on Tuesdays and on Thursdays. Tomorrow, of course, we'll have our extra pod where it's on Spotify only. Make sure you go over there and follow us on the podcast feed. Of course, follow us on Twitter, Instagram. You can also follow us over there. Very active on X. And also be sure to follow us on the podcast feed. Again, I'm pretty sure I said that already. So, all right, let's end the show here. Again, we're running a little bit behind the schedule, but that's okay. So, team record projection time. We do this around this time of the year. We do it a little bit earlier than usual, but that's okay. But yeah, we'll be doing this now until fall. Very pretty much. We'll be doing teams every single show. First up is Florida State. Did them last year, and it worked out fairly well. First when we did them first, because they started out 4-0. They beat Bama, and things were going well until things were not going well until the Virginia game. But lo and behold, we are going to do Florida State first on these new record projections. And what I'm going to do here is bring in our graphic. Should have this ready to go for you, brand new for this year, and we'll do that. Okay, there we go. Hopefully you guys can see that on your side. I can see it on my side, but again, we have the two dueling screens here. I'm not sure how that happened on my end, but for you guys, it's, I guess, fine. But let's check on my phone, make sure there's nothing weird going on. Okay, it's a little bit behind, but as you can see, there's the schedule. And eventually we'll bring in the best case, worst case scenario. If you're new here. Okay, there it is. Hopefully you guys can see that on the screen. It looks a little weird. Maybe if I do try something like that, maybe. Like this. Or maybe like that. That maybe. Yeah, that should actually work. Yeah, it's a lot better. All right, good. So that is... like that, so we'll have that playing in the background here on my phone, other phone. But anyway, yeah, so Florida State last year, of course, they went 5-7 last year. Now, Florida State this year, though, of course, you had Malzahn come in as the OC. You had Tommy Castellanos as your starting quarterback, transferred from Boston College. And then you saw what happened last year. You got off to a good start. You lose to Virginia, Miami. That's nothing terrible. I mean, those two teams are fairly competent teams. Then you lost to Pitt. Then you lost to NC State. Then you got blown out by Florida. So the season, then you lost to Stanford too. So the season unraveled pretty quickly from really that game against Miami all the way basically through. I mean, you had a handful of wins after. So if you're a Florida State fan, you go into this year, you lose Malzahn as the OC, retires, you promote from within, you have Ashton Daniels at quarterback. I need to know if Ashton Daniels can be what Tommy Castellanos was at times last year, but not just at times for the entire year for guys to get to a bowl game. Which I think is your I hate to say this, but that's your goal this year, is to get to a bowl game. Again, you haven't been to one in 2 years now. You've been 2 years removed from going 13-1 and heading to, well, we're about to head to the college football playoff where you lost your quarterback. We don't need to get into that with the snub, but that's Florida State this year. You need to have some sort of a bowl appearance type situation, get to a bowl game, win some of these games on your schedule. And unfortunately, unlike last year, which most of your schedule was workable, this year not so much. You have Bama week 3 on the road and the non-con. You have Virginia at home. That helps, but still, it's a difficult team. You have Louisville on the road, Clemson, and Miami. Well, it's actually Louisville, Miami, Clemson, all in a row. I think there is a bye week in between, I think. Don't quote me. Yeah, there is in between Miami and Clemson, but still, that's in a row. Then you have at Boston College, Pitt, NC State at home, and you have Florida. Unfortunately, this Florida State team and the way they're structured, currently, whether it's the lack of recruiting or just the lack of enthusiasm in general for Mike Norvell and Florida State, even at this schedule, if you were to put, for example, you replace Florida State with the schedule, you have to keep your schedule, replace Florida State's team with like Texas A&M or I don't know, name any other good team, put them on front of the schedule, their over win total probably what, like 7.5, 8.5. Now Florida State's win total is, I believe, 6.5, and I think Josh Pate did this whole experiment a couple weeks ago where he did the whole thing of FanDuel saying, hey, put Florida State's schedule with Florida's schedule and see what the win total would be. It'd be like 4.5. It's very, very low. So if that tells you anything, they're not supposed to be a very good team, and they're not talented. Like if, like when Bud Elliott from Cover 3 and 247 does the blue chip ratio in a few months, don't expect to see Florida State up there. I mean, Florida State recruiting isn't terrible. There's no energy. They just seem listless. And I think the best way to compare Florida State right now, if you want to use like a world history example, it's basically Florida State is kind of in a lot of ways like the sort of their vibe and the energy is sort of like how it was towards the end of the Soviet Union, towards like, the late 80s, early 90s when the Soviet Union collapsed after they went into Afghanistan. They failed miserably and spectacularly. That's what Florida State feels like. It feels like the end of the Soviet Union. No one's happy. No one's energetic. Everyone's just kind of listless and stale. That's Florida State right now. Now, doesn't mean they could get to a bowl game. They could, and we'll show you guys the record projections for this year. But right now, if you just look at it from a 50,000 foot perspective, there's nothing really, there's no real hype. There's no real hope. I mean, yes, you have Ashton Daniels starting at quarterback. He's a competent quarterback. Yes, you did lose Malzahn, and you're still going to run the same stuff because you have most of those same players. Yes, it's Mike Norvell, who has shown at times to do a lot with less, but he's also done nothing with less as well. You've seen kind of the best of both worlds of Mike Norvell. So which one are you going to get? Are you going to get the one you've gone the past 2 years, or do you get the one from, 2022, 2023? It's, we'll see. We have, the next few months to continue to, speculate, rumor, project. But of course, here we are going to project their record, and we're going to do so now. So remove that from the screen here, and we're going to replace that with a new graphic. Hopefully that's the right one. Yes, it is. And voila, here we go. We have a new graphic. So Florida State's best case scenario, again, according to based on their schedule, looking at the data, looking at who they have on the roster. And again, it's really not a talented roster, so that tells you that. But then again, it is the ACC, so it's a very open conference. But then again, you have teams like Miami and, well, I guess it really is just Miami right now. Yeah. I mean, I guess you sort of have Georgia Tech a little bit, but Miami's really the only program in the ACC that has really began to separate themselves. So with all that being said, Florida State, best case, worst case, most reasonable projection. Best case scenario, 7-5. Somehow, some way, there's a 7-5 on the schedule for Florida State. Doesn't seem like that's a real possibility, but it could, right? It's not impossible, and I think that would be uh, it'll make a lot of Florida State fans happy for sure. And I think a lot of folks would prefer that to be the case. But, you can't really, I don't know. I mean, there's certainly a way there. I mean, could you potentially get Virginia at home? Could you maybe get Clemson at home, who is also dealing with their own issues? Could you maybe get Boston College and Pitt on the road? And by the way, too, a lot of Florida State's games, they're on Friday. Like 95% of their games are on Friday, it seems like. That's not the case, but it's like more like it'd be like 60-40. But we'll circle back to that in a minute. But I mean, the best case scenario, again, you get Virginia at home, you clip Louisville or Miami on the road somehow, you avoid the whole cold weather team or warm weather team going to cold weather environments like one of these Florida schools. That's always been an issue, and unfortunately, it's back-to-back weeks of a Florida school going to a northern location dealing with cold weather. Never like that combination at all. Keep that in mind for upset alerts. Then you round out with NC State and Florida. At that point, those teams that you're playing could either be, on a win streak, or they could be, listless. So that's where the 7-5 sort of comes in. Again, a lot of these teams on here, besides maybe like Louisville, Virginia, at least in the ACC, Louisville, Virginia, Miami, those are probably the games that, at least talent-wise, would obviously out-talent you, right? But besides that, in the ACC, like NC State, Pitt, Boston College, SMU would also be another game I'll be concerned about. Like, those are the games you have to get. And I guess Virginia as well. Then the non-con, it's, Florida and Alabama. Those are going to be a way more talented teams and games. They're going to be losing regardless. I don't really see you winning those games. At least I don't think, like right now. Worst case scenario is 4-8, where the wheels pop off, obviously. Mike Norvell clearly gets fired. I don't even think he's safe at any of these options here. So 4-8, worst case scenario. I mean, you probably lose to Bama, probably lose to SMU. You probably start the season 1-2. That means you lose to Virginia, Louisville, all those teams you just mentioned. You probably even lose to Pitt or Boston College. So, yes, 4-8 is definitely in the cards for Florida State this year. Again, based on talent, the schedule, just where the vibes are. It does not seem well for Florida State. It just seems very listless. Again, I cannot emphasize that enough. That, again, this Florida State program in general feels like kind of like how it was at the end of the Soviet Union back in the 80s. I wasn't around back then, having done the research and stuff like that. Got it. Dust on my nose. It just feels like to me that Florida State's a very, very stale program, and they also have real potential to quit, right? Putting them on the quit watch pretty early on. So, yeah, 4-8, pretty much self-explanatory. Most reasonable, also self-explanatory. 6-6. Does that keep Mike Norvell around another year? Probably not. I think you still have regime change, and they almost did it last year. They couldn't do it because of money for some reason. But, again, look, this is someone who generally supports Mike Norvell. I support Florida State. I have no joy of having these numbers up here for basically the second year in a row, I believe. These are literally the same numbers I had last year. I have no joy in doing this at all whatsoever. I don't. I like Florida State. They're probably, out of all the Florida schools, the one I would like to see good. At least, would like to see them do a lot better. They just haven't been. For the last number of years, they have not. And it's unfortunate. So, yeah, Florida State's record projection there. 7-5, 4-8, 6-6. Doesn't seem very positive. Maybe we're way off on this. Maybe they go 10-2. I try to look for an option there. But the schedule, I just can't find it. So, for some reason, the stream on YouTube is very slow for some reason. I'm not sure what that's all about. Very odd. But anyway, yeah, record projection there, 2026. Record projections, again, we'll be doing this for the next couple of, next few months, really, up until the final season or the final till fall camp. So, how about that? Record projections. So, there we go. There goes the graphic. And I don't think we have any more graphics in the show. Let me just double check. I don't think we do. Yeah, I don't think we do. So, that's it for the graphics in the show. Hopefully, you guys like those. Hopefully, it didn't do as bad. Again, I'm kind of double, multitasking here, making sure all the graphics are good and whatnot. Hopefully, the stream's doing fairly well. Looks like it is. Again, if I'm pausing here, apologies for that. again, yeah, we're still trying to figure out what's working and what's not. But is what it is. You experiment on the fly, and we're still learning. But anyway, yeah, record projections. Again, we'll be doing those every single show, one team per show, maybe two teams per show for the foreseeable future up until fall camp. So Florida State was up next there. We'll get some water real quick, and we'll continue on. I'm moving right along here on the show. Good clip, 15 minutes in. Again, if you guys are new here, welcome to the show. Again, apologies for the late start, and also with, I don't know, I guess the unorganizedness of the show. We're starting a little bit later than usual, and also having to use graphics on the show for the first time ever. Again, if it seems like on YouTube Live, if you're from Spotify, this doesn't matter. But if you're listening to us on YouTube Live, you're probably thinking, man, this seems really disorganized. That's I totally understand that. I mean, this is very disorganized. I know it's not ideal, but it is what it is. Being how this show is, for those of you who don't know, we have no production team. I am the whole entire production team. I'm my own HR person. I'm my own graphics person. I'm my own pretty much everything. I wear all the hats here, and we try to run this pretty tight ship here. I mean, we run out the best show, but we're certainly one of the newer ones. So hopefully, if you're watching this live, I don't think anyone really is, but if you're watching this live, first of all, again, welcome to the show. It's not usually this organized. That I've tried, to make sure it's not. But yeah, we do this show twice a week, cover college football, and we have the extra pod on Spotify only on Thursdays or Wednesdays. Didn't do one yesterday. We'll definitely do one. I said Thursday. I meant Friday. We'll do one tomorrow, more likely. More of a Q&A base. That's where we bring in like other topics on the show. We cover sometimes over it's Marvel news, Star Wars news, Tampa Bay Buccaneers coverage. That's mainly on the extra pod. We'll bring those into the main show once in a while, but that's not what this show. That's not really what the show's main topic is. The main topic is college football all year round. But yeah, again, we are on Spotify, YouTube. You can find us over there. Of course, we have our socials as well. So, college football playoff. We haven't talked about it a whole lot. Expansion, really a whole lot. And of course, they're keeping the format the same this year, but at least for the foreseeable future, they're keeping the 12-team playoff mostly the same. From the layouts, probably the same if I'm not mistaken. There might be some minor changes, but very minor to where I can't remember them. But anyway, that's not what we're really talking about here. What we are talking about is this whole situation with the NCAA Tournament. Now, again, as you know, this show, we don't cover the NCAA Tournament on this show. I mean, it's not really we're not a college basketball show. However, we're talking about it because it does impact college football. So you haven't heard with the NCAA Tournament, they are expanding to 76 teams instead of the 64 teams. They're expanding it. A lot of college football folks, well, I guess, yeah, college football and college, mainly college basketball, but some college football folks are bringing this up because it does somewhat, in a sense, kind of relate to college football in a sense, right? And if you're seeing the reaction, by the way, from the NCAA Tournament expansion with all the college football, or with all the college basketball fans, they are not happy, for sure. It's been a lot of folks are frustrated. A lot of folks are confused why it's happening. Now, if you've been paying attention to this show or even Josh Pate show or Cover 3, this shouldn't surprise you because much like college football, college basketball, the NCAA Tournament is an ATM, as Josh Pate puts it. It's literally just an ATM. It's a money machine that prints out money, right? And that's how it works. It doesn't sound clean. It doesn't sound like, doesn't probably make a whole lot of sense to those who are not, well versed, I guess, in the college football world or the college basketball or the college athletics in general. But that's basically what it is. It's an ATM, prints out a lot of money, makes a lot of money, makes a lot of, the higher ups and all these sports, whether it's basketball, football, hockey. So that's basically all it is. I mean, that's really the best way to describe it. It's an ATM. And unfortunately, much like college football and their expansion the past couple of years, going from 4 teams to 12 teams, even though it was not necessary at all, mind you, no one was really wanting it besides the TV executives, sweater vest, and bow tie crowd. They were wanting it, but the fans and the players were not. We'll circle back to that in a minute. But then, of course, the expansion happens in college football. It goes from 4 teams to 12 teams. No one's really happy. No one really cares for it. No one wanted it. But now you're starting to see it in college basketball. Much like college football, college basketball for a long time, I said the 64-team layout, right? For all the teams in the NCAA tournament. However, over the past really few years, you've had rumors about, hey, the higher ups want to go from 64 to 70 plus. They want to add more teams in, mainly because of conference expansion, right? With the SEC expanding, the Pac-12 going away, at least the traditional one, the Big Ten expansion, ACC expanding. That's the main reason. Similar in a lot of ways to college football, right? The same thing, right? Conference expansion. The TV networks want it. The sweater vest and bow tie crowd want it. Just all the folks who control college athletics, I guess, I don't know what would you call it, the deep state of college athletics, they want this, but the fans do not want it. Okay? Never, ever have any of these people ever considered the fan or the player input for expansion. That's sort of the big, I guess, takeaway here. Based on all of the expansion, whether it's college football or NCAA tournament, they never considered the fans' input or the players. Like, do these people at any of these organizations, whether it's the NCAA proper or the College Football Playoff Committee, or them or the TV execs, have they ever done a focus group? Because I've been part of those before. Did one in my undergrad for from my classes. Have these people ever done a focus group and done actually done it by bringing in actual college football fans, not other TV executives, not other members of the College Football Playoff Committee, not coaches, or I guess not coaches, but I guess like folks who are not in that ecosystem that you're a part of. Okay, have you ever done that? Brought in actual fans, legit fans who you actually watch your product? Have you brought in the players yet to just get their input, do a focus group, bring some food, listen in, record the whole thing? Have you ever done that before? Because I guarantee you, if any of these organizations, whether it's the CFU or the NCAA tournament or any of these TV networks, if they actually did a fucking focus group and did it properly and actually had the actual fans come and had the actual players come in, because again, anytime they make these decisions, they're all for themselves. They're selfish. They have a lot of, mentioned this yesterday, they have a lot of hubris, okay? It's the, it's the millionaire class. This is all because of them. They all want to make more money. They want to, expand the tournament for no reason whatsoever. There's no, legitimate reason why. They're just doing it just to make more money. As Josh Pate puts it, it's an ATM. Prints out more money. Keep it going. Keep the ATM going. Don't let it dry out, because God forbid if these millionaires lose money or stop making money. That's why this is happening, is because those folks who run the sport, whether it's TV executives, folks at the NCAA, or anyone who is a millionaire, they're the reason why this is happening. This is why the NCAA tournament expansion is expanding. This is why the college football playoff is expanding. And frankly, this is sort of why conference realignment has happened. It's all because of all these, TV executives, networks and whatnot, whether it's them, just all of these millionaires and billionaires. They want this because it makes them more money. But for the fans, it ruins the experience. Like, again, nobody outside of these fucking millionaires, billionaires, TV executives, and these people, outside of them, nobody wanted this. Nobody wanted the college football playoff to expand. Nobody wants the NCAA tournament to expand. But, again, because both of these sports are ATMs, make a lot of money, it must happen. It's almost like an absolute point. It just has to happen. It must happen. Even though none of these people have ever done a focus group with people like me, you watching this show, or anyone, or any of these players. How come any of these, whenever these, people or whoever the fuck they are, again, I don't ever get us fired up in a show or cuss like this, but screw it. These people deserve it. But back to what I was saying, have these people ever done a focus group where they actually brought in real fans, actual fans who watch the games and watch the tournament? Have you ever done that? Because I guarantee you, based on my own personal experience and seeing the internet, nobody wants this. Nobody wants this, whether it's the NCAA tournament or conference or playoff expansion. Period. Nobody wants this. The system was perfect before. The system in the NCAA tournament and the college football playoff with 4 teams, or I guess currently 12 teams, is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with the 64 teams. What? Because God forbid a whole bunch of SEC teams get left out. Any Big Ten teams get left out. Well, you know what? Too bad. You should have done a lot better. This is the one thing, again, I don't want to sound like I'm getting mad here, but you can tell I'm very fired up about this. This is one of the things why I never ever agreed with the college football expansion to 12 teams. The 14 playoff was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. And in fact, it was actually better. Why? Because it created urgency. It made those spots exclusive. They were not some, it wasn't like you can go buy a college football playoff spot on Amazon or go to the freaking grocery store and buy one. It was exclusive. It was something that teams had to work a little bit harder to get to. It created more urgency in the season. It created, less, it had no safety net. If you lost games, too bad. It just, I don't know. Again, it's just having the 14 playoff there, it just created more urgency. Again, this isn't just me saying this. Go look at folks like Josh Pate, who I completely agree with. The 14 playoff, there was nothing wrong with it at all whatsoever. Yes, you can break up and say, well, look at the, college football, the last year, the 14 playoff with Florida State being left out. Okay, that's different. Okay, and that's just rare exceptions to the rule. But generally, every single year, there was something wrong with the 14 playoff. But again, the only reason why they're doing this, both the NCAA tournament and the college football playoff, is because both of those sports, the college basketball and college football, are ATMs. They make money. And if it makes them more money, you can expand it more and get even more money. These folks don't care. Again, I guarantee these folks never, ever, ever, ever done a focus group with fans who actually watch the sport and are not tied to any, they're not, freaking, sports reporters, anything like that, or TV personalities. Actual fans I'm talking about. I guarantee you they have never done that. Never, ever done that. Nor have they ever considered the players. Do you seriously believe that expanding the college football playoff beyond 16 or beyond 12 teams is good enough for the players and the health? Like, have you ever thought about that? Because I guarantee you, and this is something that Josh Pate's brought up before on his show, and I think this was interesting when he brought this up. He mentioned this back a couple of years ago when the whole 12-team playoff thing was a real thing and the discussions were, legit. He brought up the fact that he talked to players and coaches privately, and he basically said, I don't remember his exact quote, but I'm pretty sure he's brought this up before on shows in the past, that he's brought up to both fans, people who he knew, and players and coaches. Nobody wanted the playoff to expand. They were not for it at all. And I trust Josh Payton. He has connections and he has people in the industry, whether it's coaches, players he's talked to privately off the record. I agree with him. And I guarantee you, nobody in college basketball, whether it's coaches, players, or fans, obviously, they don't want this. But again, the reason why it is happening is because the sweater vest and bow tie crowd want to make more money because it's an ATM. And it's convenient for them, right? So, yeah, this is not good. Yes, this does impact college football. And yes, this is a signal that college football expansion, it's going to happen still. It's going to continue to happen for, I don't know, as far as many more teams you can add in. What, they want to go to like 1,000 teams? When you want to bring in everyone, all 163 or 136 plus teams in the college football playoff, go right ahead. I'll just say this from a spectacle standpoint, that may seem cool, but I'm just being honest with you, that sounds stupid. That sounds boring. Just because folks like college football or like the NCAA tournament doesn't mean they need more of it. If you were watching it, that means the current product was fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Okay, there was nothing wrong with the NCAA tournament or the 14 playoff, or I guess the current 12-team playoff. But again, because these folks view these sports, these certain people, these oligarchs, or whatever you want to call them, because they view college football and college basketball as a freaking ATM, and just they look at it not even an ATM, just a pile of cash. That's why they expand, because it makes them more money, not us. It does nothing to benefit the fans, the players, or the coaches. And in fact, it adds even more pressure onto them. You're seeing it in college football, right? You're starting to see it with teams who don't make the playoffs, 12-team playoffs, because it's, hey, more access to it. So that means there's no reason why you shouldn't make it. For those teams who don't make it now, who barely make it or barely miss it, those coaches are going to get fired. Or if not, or at the very least, they're going to get a lot of pressure thrown on them. That would never happen in the 14 playoff. Because it was understandable because it was more exclusive anyway. I can continue on and on here, but yeah, this whole NCAA tournament expansion, the whole college ball expansion thing, it just really has pissed me off. It really has. So that's my thoughts on that. Again, it just irritates me how these people, these oligarchs, essentially, these money-making people, view college sports in that way to where they will make unnecessary changes that nobody was asking for. Nobody was asking for the college football playoff to expand beyond 4 teams. Nobody was asking for the NCAA tournament to expand beyond 64 teams. It's incredibly stupid and incredibly dumb how these folks view these sports as ATMs. And again, like I mentioned before, we'll move on. I guarantee these folks have never done a focus group with us, the fans, as normal fans, or the players at all, to get their thoughts on it, to actually hear what they have to say and give their input. They have never considered that. You as someone who's a PR, as a communication PR, someone who has a degree in that field, and it just boggles the mind that it doesn't seem like they've even done that. It just doesn't seem like they did that. And if they did it with all these ESPN employees and Fox employees and whatnot. It just that's who their focus group was. It wasn't the fans. It wasn't. It was just these ESPN Fox employees who aren't even like legit fans. Some of them cover the NFL, probably in like the NBA or some shit. Like, again, I know that sounds like I'm using rough language here, but that's because this does fire me up and does piss me off. Again, it just seems like they never consider the fans. They never consider even the players. They never have. Anyway, rant over. Last up here of the show, then we'll move on. Again, shorter show today. I apologize for that, but it is what it is. Last up here. Sort of a question we have that was brought up to. Well, I guess it wasn't really brought up to me. It was actually I thought this up on my own, but anyway, I thought up this question on my own. Is the Auburn Georgia rivalry still relevant? Deep South's Orders rivalry. As someone who used to live in the state of Alabama, lived there for most of my life before high school, before I moved down here to Florida, this rivalry used to mean something. If you're an Auburn fan or a Georgia fan, this rivalry used to mean something. And it still does, because, look, there's a lot of reasons why it's relevant. It's one of the oldest ones in the SEC, or it is the oldest one in the SEC. It's, both fan bases are very unique in that they both live in each state. There's that whole factor. There's a factor of both teams recruiting each other's state. Auburn recruits Georgia a lot, and vice versa. Georgia recruits the state of Alabama heavily. Both of these teams have had a lot of success in their entire history. A lot of classical games. Whether it's the Hail Mary game or any other game in the history of the sport, or the history of the sport and the rivalry. It's a very historic rivalry. It's very important. But the question was, is it still relevant? That's mainly because as of, since 2017 onward, Auburn has not won this game in over 10 years. It's been that long. I don't think a lot of folks realize that. It's almost been 10 years since Auburn's won this game. I don't know. The last time they won was all the way in 2017. That was the Jarrett Stidham team of Kerryon Johnson, because Malzahn was still the coach. That was Kirby Smart's second year, by the way, in Athens. That was the year when they made it to their first national title. Under him, they lost it to Bama. That was the second and 26. So it has been that long since Auburn has won this rivalry. And ever since then, none of these games have been very competitive, especially the ones on the road in Athens in Georgia. The ones in Auburn, they've been competitive, but the ones there in Athens, nope, they've not been very competitive. It's unfortunate, too, because this is, again, it's a rivalry that should be competitive and should be a lot of fun. But it's like every single time these teams play, especially within the last 10 years, it's basically a guaranteed Georgia win. It's almost like an absolute point that they must win. This has to happen. Now, granted, the games in Auburn are a lot more closer, but the second this rivalry, when it rotates and goes to Sanford Stadium, it's like a guaranteed 45-0 loss. Like it's just a guarantee Auburn may as well have lost the game even before it played, or even before it gets been played. So, to really answer the question here, is it still relevant? It's relevant to those fans because they obviously care about it, but in the whole scope of college football, it's not really relevant anymore because it's not competitive anymore. It's not. And again, a lot of this is on Auburn's fault. Georgia, they've held their talent of the bargain, right? They've been competitive. Obviously, they've had top 5 recruiting classes essentially ever since Kirby Smart's been there. They've had 10-win seasons there ever since Kirby Smart's been there, essentially on average. So they have been successful. Okay, they have held their end of the rivalry. Auburn has not. Auburn has had more real as the tail end of the Malzahn years when they weren't recruiting very well and those teams got less and less talented. Where real as the dismal Brian Harsin years or Hugh Freeze years. It's just, it's mainly one side of the rivalry, and it's not very competitive anymore. I wish that wasn't the case, but that's those are the reasons why. It's just that Auburn has not whether it's getting coaching hirings right, they have not recruited well enough to keep up with Georgia. Those are all the factors. And, hopefully Alex Galesh will change that. Hopefully that this hire of him will sort of bring Auburn back to where they were, prior to this long winning streak. But I just really don't see it changing anytime soon. Now, maybe in a year or so when the game's back in Auburn again next year at Jared Harris Stadium, maybe they can change that and finally end this long streak. But, just think about it, too. Like the last time Auburn won in this stadium, won in Athens, I was 3 years old. That was in 2005. That's how long ago that was. I have never, ever experienced Auburn winning in Athens, Georgia, literally in my life, or at least as, having cognitive life. Yes, I was a toddler in 2005, but I didn't remember that. I was like 3 years old. Like, there's no way I was going to remember watching Auburn win in Athens. Now, my dad might remember that. Obviously, he does, but I don't. So, literally, in my lifetime, I don't remember. And that's pretty interesting, to say the least. That's never happened in my lifetime at all. And it's unfortunate, but given the trajectory of Auburn and Georgia, that's for the foreseeable future, it's going to be less and less competitive and less relevant on the national stage. Hopefully that changes this year. Maybe Auburn goes into Athens and they shock Georgia, but I just don't see it happening for the foreseeable future. I just don't see this rivalry being relevant, at least on a national level. Again, in a regional level, especially in the SEC, yeah, it's going to be, and of course it's going to be relevant. It's Auburn and Georgia. It's a deep South Silver's rivalry, but in terms of the national standpoint, it's not really relevant anymore, at least at the moment. Doesn't mean it can't be relevant in the future, but at the moment it is not. It just has not been relevant. It has not been competitive, right? So that whole Kanoff versus Havnot, Auburn has not been competitive with Georgia. It's not like, this will continue forever. And eventually, of course, it will change. It's, it will eventually change at some point. Auburn will get a win. But for the foreseeable future, I don't see it happening at this point. I just don't see it happening. And until things drastically change there or just some fluke happens, Auburn's not going to win at Georgia until they can, get talent and really find the right coach. It just isn't going to happen. So, unfortunately, it's not relevant anymore on the national level. But, again, on a regional level and with fans, yeah, it's still relevant. But, unfortunately, it's not relevant anymore because it's not competitive anymore. Maybe that changes. Maybe it won't for the foreseeable future. But eventually it will change. But within the next 5 years or so, I'm not expecting much change in my opinion. At least I'll just go ahead and just say that. I just don't expect this rivalry to be really competitive for the next 5 years. I just don't really see Auburn winning a game until, again, they can get head coach right. Maybe they can get some stability with Heupel, and then not Heupel, Alex Galesh. Then they can hopefully get better recruits and get better players to actually beat Georgia. Because at the moment, it's more or less, going against a huge, powerful force with an object that's can't stop it. So that's it for the show. Again, apologies for the disorganization and whatnot. It was later shoot than I wanted it to be. Had some stuff to deal with before. So, and not to mention, too, we had the graphics and whatnot to make that was part of the reason why we got started a little bit later. But, it is what it is. But we got, and got it in less than 40 minutes. Not bad. But, again, the rant earlier about the college football playoff and NCAA tournament, look, as someone who has, again, done PR and, or at least not done PR, but got a degree in public relations with communication, it just bothers me how these people just don't seem to understand fan input and player input. They've just never considered it. But anyway, that's it for the show. Again, we'll be back tomorrow with the extra pod. We'll get that in as soon as possible. By the way, too, here in Jacksonville, we had some rain earlier. I was worried that we were going to have to do a show with thunderstorms going on and hearing thunder in the background. We luckily missed out on that, so good for us. But yeah, we'll be back tomorrow with the extra pod. Again, be sure to subscribe to the podcast feed for that. That's the only place you can find it. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll try to get this show, today's show, and Tuesday's show on the podcast feed hopefully tomorrow. If you guys listen on Spotify, if you're on YouTube, that just won't matter. So until next weekend, we'll have the extra pod tomorrow on YouTube. Until next week on Tuesday, same schedule as usual. I don't think there'll be any changes there. Until then, take care, and we will see you guys on the next stream.